Hello and welcome to the first brand new episode of the Fin to the Woods podcast. In nearly a year, I do apologise, I've been slacking. I can't apologise enough, but I'm back now and better than ever, apparently. That's what I'm telling myself anyway. But I'm going to be back on a more regular basis, and I actually promise that I will follow through with that promise this time. I'm going to do a new episode every single week, talking about the latest theatre news, reviews, what's been going on, some random tidbits that come to my mind over the course of that week, and anything else that might spring up that I want to include. But yeah, I'm going to make it more regular so people can, as well as learn things about what's going on in the theatre industry at the moment, hear some random things that I'm saying every single week. We have to start off this episode talking about Death Becomes Her. I need to rant about it because it looks so good. So the 90s film Death Becomes Her, which starred Meryl Streep, Goldie Hawn and Bruce Willis, has been adapted for the stage in a new musical which made its premiere in Chicago a couple of weeks ago. And I can't tell you how excited I am for this. This film has become a bit of a cult classic, especially within the gay community, and it's a hilarious film. I think it's brilliant, and it's the right type of film to adapt for the stage because it's camp as anything already, so they're only going to layer the campness on extremely thick. And from what I've heard and from what I've read, that is exactly what they've done, and that's the best news ever. The photos they released a couple of weeks ago of the curtain call, their dresses are beautiful. And they've released a couple of videos of some musical numbers within the show this week. And it just looks like so much fun. And that's what a musical adaptation of Death Becomes Her needed to be. It needed to be fun and it needed to be funny. And from everyone's opinions online and the reviews it's had while having its tryout in Chicago, it looks like it's going that way. People seem to be really enjoying it, and that's all I could have asked for. I just need to go off the train of thought of Death Becomes Her to tell you that if you hear any weird noises, it's not me. It's either my pipes clicking, or it's the fridge making a weird noise, which it does do sometimes. Just thought I'd tell you now, before you wonder if something's gone wrong with your phone. Back to Death Becomes Her. From what I've read as well, the principal casting is pretty darn good, and it's Megan Hilty, Jennifer Simard, and Christopher Sieber, all of whom are very well respected and well established musical theatre performers. They all have Tony nominations under their belts, and they are good at comedy. I saw Jennifer Simard and Christopher Sieber in the Broadway revival of Company as the married couple Sarah and Harry, and they have the first scene in the show, the first scene that Bobby has with any of the couples one-on-one. And if that scene isn't funny and doesn't make the audience kind of roll on the floor laughing, you've got a long way to go with that show. And they were brilliant. So brilliant, in fact, that Jennifer Simard got a Tony nomination for it. And she is just hilarious. So I'm so glad that they got actors who are good at musical comedy to do a musical comedy, because sometimes if that casting isn't done right, it all kind of falls to pieces. I obviously also love Megan Hilty, who starred in Smash, which I watched and adored, so I'm glad she's doing it with them too. You've also got Michelle Williams, not the movie star, but the Destiny's Child star. She is playing one of the other leads in the film. I think she's the one who kind of provides them with the potion. I think that's her character's part. But Nicole Scherzinger did that part in the workshops for Death Becomes Her. But then, obviously, she's busy being Norma Desmond, which is also coming to Broadway, around the same time that Death Becomes Her is now coming to Broadway. Anyway, that's a bit of a side note, but Michelle Williams, from what I've seen in the clip they released of her voice is insane, but I don't know how good her acting is. I've not seen much of that. I know she did Once on This Island on Broadway. She also did Chicago on Broadway, like many other people. So she has theatrical experience. And I'm intrigued to see how she does as the show progresses. As I said, it's been announced already that the show will be transferring to Broadway in the autumn to the Lunt-Fontanne, which is where Sweeney Todd has just closed. And I'm super happy it's going to Broadway because it gets a shot at the Tonys and all the other theatrical awards, which is always very exciting. But hopefully it will come over to the UK at some point in the near future, or else I'm booking a flight to New York, to be honest. Talking of Broadway transfers, let's talk about another Broadway transfer that was announced in the past week, and that is Once Upon a Mattress. Now, this musical is a classic Broadway musical. It premiered, I think, in the late 50s, 1959 or 1960, around then, and since then, it hasn't been on Broadway that much at all. One revival in the mid-90s, starring Sarah Jessica Parker in the leading role of Princess Winifred, and also Jane Krakowski in the other female lead of Lady Larkin. But apart from that, it's not had any really major revivals. It's had quite a few TV adaptations starring the original star Carol Burnett, and also a Disney film in, I think, 2005 starring Tracy Ullman, Zooey Deschanel. Carol Burnett was in that as well. It's had an interesting life, and it's quite popular within amateur theatre circles, especially in the US. So it's quite exciting that Once Upon a Mattress is returning to Broadway for the first time in nearly 30 years. And it's going to be starring two-time Tony Award winner Sutton Foster, who did this role at the New York City Centre Encores earlier this year. And I don't know if the rest of the cast from that production are transferring with it. I'm hoping they do. I think Michael Urie, who was in that Encores production, is also transferring to Broadway. But all the other people like Cheyenne Jackson and Nikki Renee Daniels and Harriet Harris, I'm not sure if they're coming over. I hope they do. It would be really nice if all of that cast managed to go to Broadway. It's only for a limited run from the end of July to the end of November, because then it's going off to LA for 4 weeks. But it's going to be at the Hudson Theatre, which is currently where the Merrily We Roll Along revival is playing, the very successful Merrily We Roll Along revival. Will Once Upon a Mattress have the same success as Merrily or any other recent Broadway revivals? I'm not too sure. If you look at Into the Woods, which is from the same director as this production of Mattress, that ran for a lot longer than was expected. But Mattress, I don't really think has the audience necessarily to run as long. And I think once you take out stars from Mattress, I don't think it will probably sell off its own back. But we shall see. And I think it's going to have a lot of competition at the Tonys, because Once Upon a Mattress has never won a Tony Award. It's only been nominated for, I think, 3 across both previous Broadway productions. So it will be interesting to see if this one can break the trend and get a few more nominations and maybe a win. Sutton Foster probably has the best chance playing Princess Winifred. She will probably get a Tony nomination, let's be honest. But she might be up against Nicole Scherzinger for Sunset Boulevard. You've got Jennifer Simard and Megan Hilty for Death Becomes Her, will be in the same season. You've also got this rumoured revival of Gypsy starring Audra McDonald, which is meant to be opening supposedly this autumn as well. It's going to be crowded, so I have a feeling already that Once Upon a Mattress might not find its way in. But I'm hoping it does, because I do think it deserves it. I was involved in a production of it not earlier this year, at the end of last year. God, time goes so quickly. And we had a lot of fun with it. It is just a load of fun. So, yeah, fingers crossed that it is successful once more on Broadway. A very recent piece of theatre news from here in the UK, literally a day or two old, is the cancellation of the UK tour of Bonnie and Clyde. So, the musical Bonnie and Clyde, when it first premiered, must be over a decade ago now, over in the States, wasn't that successful. But over here in the UK, over the last year and a half, 2 years, it's kind of found its footing. It had a one-night concert at the Theatre Royal Drury Lane, and it was very successful. And that led to 2 West End runs, and obviously they thought, let's do a UK tour, because it did find an audience. However, this tour, which started in February, this week, has just been cancelled. They were about to start performances in Southend, and it's just not happening. They've cancelled the rest of the tour. It was meant to go on for quite a few more months, and they've just pulled it, supposedly due to poor ticket sales. That's what the statement said. And obviously, when a show does have poor ticket sales, it isn't necessarily going to be making the money where they can afford to pay everyone, because theatre is expensive to do, especially a UK tour when you're going up and down the country and here, there and everywhere. It's expensive, and if you're not making the money from those ticket sales and the show isn't selling, you can't afford to pay the people involved, so it's all just going to be a bit shambolic. So I imagine that's probably what's happened with Bonnie and Clyde. And it's extremely sad because people are out of jobs overnight. From what I've read and seen online, the cast and the people involved in the production currently found out the day before, but there were cast members and people joining the production in September who weren't told. They were not told at all. They found out from the What's on Stage exclusive announcement that Bonnie and Clyde was cancelled, which I think is pretty disgusting, let's be honest here. When the whole bad Cinderella situation, if you remember that, when the new cast of Andrew Lloyd Webber's Cinderella were about to basically go into rehearsals for it, and they just cancelled the rest of the run. It was going to close in 4 weeks' time. They hadn't told anyone, they hadn't told the current cast. It was pretty dreadful, and everyone in the theatre industry seemed to go, why the fuck is this still happening in 2020, whatever year it was, 2022? Why is it still happening then? And 2 years later, it's happened all over again with Bonnie and Clyde. And it just annoys me. I just don't get how people haven't learnt from that. And why does the press come first? Why does What's on Stage and anywhere else come first? Surely the people involved in the production, the people who have signed contracts to be in that production in a few months' time, just an email, just something, a phone call, anything to tell them prior to it going out in a press release, I just think is common courtesy. And I just think everyone should be doing that. And it kind of baffles me that that isn't the case. I also feel for all the box office staff up and down the country, to all these venues that Bonnie and Clyde was meant to go to, and they've just cancelled at the last minute, so everyone's going to be ringing up complaining. So I do send my love to anyone who works in a box office where Bonnie and Clyde was meant to be going. I've got to talk briefly about the Wicked trailer. It looks marvellous. I'm really excited for the Wicked movie, and I never thought I'd say that because I'm not the biggest fan of Wicked. I like it. It's fine. It's not my favourite show in the world. I've seen it twice and I enjoyed it both times, but I'm not an avid super fan of Wicked. But this film has really excited me, and I think it's because the cinematography and just the visuals and the colours look so lovely. And I know that they used a lot of physical sets as well, like the whole Munchkin Land set was built here in the UK, which is exciting. And the casting looks brilliant as well. Cynthia Erivo, love her. I was sceptical about Ariana Grande, I can't lie to you, but since watching the trailer and seeing all these bits and about how passionate she is about the movie and doing Glinda justice, and also her close relationship with the original Glinda, Kristen Chenoweth, it's restored my faith and I'm very excited. Also Jonathan Bailey. That's all I need to say. He is a lovely man. It isn't very long until Hello Dolly opens at the London Palladium, starring Imelda Staunton as Dolly Gallagher-Levi. And I love Hello Dolly. It's one of my favourite classic Broadway musicals. I loved seeing it on Broadway with Bette Midler. I'd just like to drop that in there. And I think Imelda Staunton is going to be so good in this part. And I know that they've kind of rejigged it a bit. They've added in Just Leave Everything to Me, which is was written for the film for Barbra Streisand. And it's being added in for Imelda. That is good because it's always needed to be in the musical. And they finally are doing it. Maybe it's just for me. But yeah, so that's happening here in the UK. But later this year in Paris, they are doing a revival of Hello Dolly, starring the brilliant Caroline O'Connor, who is such an underrated musical theatre performer. She has done a lot out in Australia, which is where she's from, but she's done a few bits here in the UK, a few bits on Broadway. She did Anastasia on Broadway. I saw her in The Rink over here in London with Gemma Sutton. That was really, really good. I wish that had a further life, but I kind of want to go. I was going to say fly to Paris, but it's probably better to get the Euro tunnel over. But I can't drive, so someone else would have to come with me to drive. I will just drag one of my family members with me. But I do really want to see it because I love Hello Dolly. I'm assuming it won't be in French because I might have a few problems there I can say je m'appelle bonjour and croissant, but apart from that, I'm a bit screwed. Hopping back over to the States, let's talk awards, because it's theatrical awards season over in New York, and there's so many different ones. But this week, we had the Drama League Awards, and they are, I guess, an indicator in some way, just like the Drama Desk Awards and all those others that lead up to the Tonys. And they help kind of see where the Tony might go, who it might go to, who it might be between. And that's always quite exciting, especially when there are quite close races within the categories. Let me talk you through some of the winners. So, Outstanding Production of a Play went to Stereophonic, an Outstanding Revival of a Play went to Appropriate, Outstanding Production of a Musical went to Hell's Kitchen, and Outstanding Revival of a Musical went to Merrily We Roll Along. All those winning productions are nominated in their respective categories at the Tonys this year as well, so that could give us a slight indication of where those wins might go. I think in the revival category, especially at the Tonys for the musical section, I think Merrily will take it. The only other competition might be the Cabaret Revival, which I know in London was really well received, but over in New York, they haven't liked it as much, and I think that's going to really hinder its chances. And then at the Drama League Awards, they have the Distinguished Performance Award, and they basically nominate loads of people from all the different shows. I think there's nearly 50 nominees in this one category, but only one person can take home the award. And this year, it went to Sarah Paulson for her performance in Appropriate, and she is also nominated for the Best Actress in a Play Tony Award. The Tonys are always really, really tough, and it's not necessarily always going to go the way that you expect it to, so there's always that slight tension in the air, which I do love with any awards show. I love watching award shows on the TV because I just love the suspense and the drama, and also all the disappointed clapping when people haven't won and they think they should have won. It makes my day. It makes me very happy. But I think it's really interesting with the Tonys is when a show transfers from the West End and doesn't necessarily do as well. And I'm talking about Back to the Future here, which over here in the UK has done really well and took home the Best Musical Olivier Award. Over in America, on Broadway, it only received 2 Tony nominations for Best Scenic Design of a Musical and Best Featured Actor in a Musical for Roger Bart. I thought it was going to do a lot better over there. I thought they were going to love it, and I thought it was going to do really well at the Tonys. But I think just because the competition is so tough this year, it kind of got pushed out, a bit like the revival of The Wiz. I love The Wiz, and the original Broadway production won many Tonys, including Best Musical. This new revival, the first revival in a very long time on Broadway, got nothing. No Tony nominations at all. And I just find it really interesting how, depending on the production, shows can be a huge success at one point in their life, and then sometimes only a few years later, sometimes decades later, they're nowhere near as successful. Another Tony nominee from this year is Jessica Lange, who is nominated for her performance in Mother Play, and lots of people will know her now for her performances in the American Horror Story series. And she is a great actress, and a couple of years ago, in September 2022, she started filming the new film adaptation of Eugene O'Neill's Long Day's Journey into Night. She played the lead role in this play on Broadway and won a Tony for it back in 2016, so it was the logical thing to make a film of it starring her. They filmed it, like I said, in September 2022 for a few months. It wrapped filming, and then it never saw the light of day. It was rumoured to be this big awards contender. There was a lot of buzz about it, and it just went quiet. Nothing happened with it, and I'm actually not quite sure why, but she gave us an update this week that the film is finally finished. This does not mean that it's being released. We just know it's finished, which is a good thing, I guess. I don't know how complicated this film is. I'm imagining it's going to be a marvel. I'm imagining, actually, that it was probably due to financial difficulties that it got held up for so long, but it would be exciting if it's the best film ever made, because it's taken a very long time to go through the edit. And I just think by that point you must be so detached from it because you've done so many other things. This is what probably won't be released till nearly 2.5 years after they started filming it. Think of all the other things that the actors in that will have done, and the crew and the director. They probably have forgotten what they did on it, and then they've got to do press things for it and this, that and the other. I couldn't be bothered. But hopefully in the not so distant future we'll actually see the film. It might be this year, it might be in a decade, who knows. I thought I'd end each episode with a vaguely fun fact, because I don't think they're actually necessarily fun, but they might be fairly interesting. But this week's vaguely fun fact is to do with the Tonys, because we've been talking about it, and it's to do with West Side Story. Now, West Side Story is one of musical theatre's beloved classics. Everyone knows West Side Story, and a lot of people love it. And so you'd think that the original Broadway production would have won Best Musical at the Tonys. It would have won all the awards. It didn't at all. It didn't not win any. It won 2 awards at the Tonys. But the big winner that night was The Music Man, which took home 6 awards, including Best Musical. So no, West Side Story did not win Best Musical, and actually it's never won Best Revival of a musical either. So there you go. Well, there we are. That's the first episode back of the Fin to the Woods podcast. I hope you enjoyed listening to it, because I certainly enjoyed speaking into this microphone for however long it's taken me to record this. If you have anything you'd like me to talk about on the podcast, do let me know. You can message me on Instagram, or you can email me at fintothewoods@gmail.com, and I will see if there's any topics you'd like me to discuss. And I know I said I would do an episode once a week, but I am going into tech for the Hunchback of Notre Dame next week, so it might be slightly delayed. I will try, but I am in a theatre all day, every day for the whole of next week, so I might not get the chance necessarily, but I promise it'll be out as soon as possible. But yes, thank you for listening. Do share with your friends, your family, any other theatre-loving people, and I will talk to you again at some point soon, hopefully within the next week.